This is a recording of the May 13, 2023 meetup of the NMRA-PCR Coast Division. The meetup features reviews of the recent auction and convention, and the 2024 PCR Convention in Silicon Valley is announced. We follow with show your modeling and a discussion.
So welcome to the May 13th PCR Coast Division Saturday virtual event. I had four things wanted to kind of go through today. First, just kind of review the May 5th Coast auction, then talk a little bit about the PCR convention, then talk about the convention in Silicon Valley where it's announced now and we're ready and registrations are going on, and then finally just go ahead and do a little bit of modeling, show and tell. I know Frank also would like to, and maybe I'll just jump to Frank right away, because I know Frank has there's an event coming up in Sonora. I think Frank, and maybe you want to take a moment and just talk about that before we kick off too far.
Yeah, the Sierra Rail, there's a Tuolumne County train organization that's run by three of our members, John Zach, Glenn Sutherland, and Larry Jensen. Larry's written the books on the movie Railroads. He's written four of them. And they're putting an event on June 3rd at the Sierra, Railtown 1897. And for PCR members, they'll charge 50. For everybody else, it's 75. And it's a wine and cheese, few hour drive down the Sierra tracks, going further than you can go on their regular excursions. And you just have to tell them you're a PCR member. You can go online and do it. And it should be good. Now, they set it up on a date that I can't go. We're driving that day to Vegas to watch our grandkids that are down there for a family reunion on my son-in-law's side. So I'm bummed, but it should be a pretty good thing. There's a few other things I'm going to start posting. The other thing I'd like to talk about is I really need somebody to take over publicity for the PCR, as Pete Birdsong can't do it anymore. So it's the two of us working together. So if anybody's interested, get a hold of me. It's not a big job, but it's needed. And the other thing, if anybody knows who registered the PCR website, let me know, or Mike Eldridge. We're trying to move to a different, Mike's going to do the web. And right now he needs to take it over, and he can't because he doesn't have authority to. So Kevin Hiller seemed to be the guy registered, and I've tried contacting him, email and phone, with no luck. So that's where we're at. We may have to change the name of the PCR website. So that's what I had. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. So just continuing on here real quickly. Just a little bit on the auction, give it a little wrap up for everyone. We had, I think, about 220 items went across the block. There were some great items. I don't know if you happen to notice this in the Coast Extra, there was a video link. I took a shot of video of the tables. And, if you look at that, the first block of items were all brass locomotives. They were actually priced at $150, and quite frankly, most of them didn't sell. And, if you look at brass locomotive pricing on eBay or other places, that was very reasonable. So, I think one of the things that kind of told me, and I come back to this, is that, we only had about 50 attendees. I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of the Coast members don't realize what they're missing, or PCR members at the auction. I think we kind of let it get a little bit of a bad reputation, but there were a lot of really nice items there. The overall cost loss of running the auction this time, based on what we know, is about $325. The facility cost us about $575. That included the extra room charge for the clinic room. Our net income was about $250. So that leaves us at about the 325 of difference. One of the things that's interesting to think about here is that if the $250 of income at 10%, that's $2,500 of auction transaction revenue, which if you divide that by the 220 items comes out to about $11.30 per item. So, I think that's really important for people to note. There's one of the things that I have been a little bit guilty of this, of saying that, we've gotten less of the valuable items at the auction, and the average value of the items has gone down in that. But I would say at this auction, there were two things. I thought the items were much better, much generally on an average better overall quality. And there were a number of items that I thought were really good that didn't sell, whether they were some books that were really good or like I said, some of the locomotives. So, and even so, the average sales price was $11.30. We're planning an auction for December. Looking for input on the date. The two dates would either be the 2nd or the 9th of December. Same location in Alameda. One of the things we need to decide on over the next, between now and clearly sometime before December, is about food. We did not have any food at this auction. That was because I didn't have a food volunteer. I do have a line on potentially having some Boy Scout group do lunch as kind of as a fundraiser / interaction. That would be great. If that doesn't turn out, I may put something out and see if there's an interest in doing something like a pizza order or something like that. Any input on that this would be great. I'm very much looking for ideas and thoughts.
Whatever happened to the idea about the food truck?
The problem with the only problem with the food truck is I'm concerned that with the 50 people, even if we get 20% of the people or 30% of the people to order, you're only talking about 10 or 15 orders. And I'm just not sure I can sell a food truck on driving there for 10 or 15 orders. And I'm not going to, I'm just not going to tell them, oh, it's going to be hundreds of people there and have them show up and get, 15 orders and be upset. So that's kind of, I thought a lot about trying to get a food truck, but I just don't know how to motivate somebody to come. So, I mean, the one thing we can do, is we could, we talked about this, do a $10 pizza thing. And basically, I can set it up on Eventbrite ahead of time pretty easily, where, you buy a pizza coupon for $10 and we sell them at the event until 11:15, and then at 11:15, based on how many have ordered, we order pizzas and have them delivered. We could do it. That would be what I'm trying to figure out, is something that has minimal volunteer time commitment. Because I'll be really honest. I talked to Mark. Mark and I had a conversation with someone potentially volunteering to do food, and Mark's comment was, knowing what I know, I would never do it. Says you lose your Saturday shopping for stuff, you lose Sunday, you don't really get to participate in the auction or anything else. You're kind of just sitting there. And he said, and so after you've done it a few times, it really becomes kind of a chore. So, my thought is, how do we eliminate that and do food in a way? I mean, the other thing would just be to have a longer break. The one real problem with the senior center is there's nothing around it as far as food. You have to get in the car. There's really no way to walk to get food. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Just any ideas, please shoot them to me. On the other hand, if everybody knows there's no food, then you just bring your own. If you want a sandwich, just bring it with you. So,
Phil, one question: the stuff that was donated, did that stuff sell?
I think almost everything that was donated sold. The only one that I remember getting back was that soldering station I threw in.
Okay.
I think all the stuff you put in all sold, and I think the other stuff that I threw in sold. So,
I know
Go ahead.
Just a suggestion. Next time, if an item is coming up, and in a manner of speaking, it belongs to PCR, it's been donated, and we're going to make all the proceeds, announce that.
Yeah, we normally
Because
do,
I
and
would,
we. Yep.
I didn't hear it at all.
You're
I
right.
would have bid on things, even if it wasn't whatever I wanted, just, as a donation kind of thing.
I hadn't thought about this until just now, and you caused me, Jesse, to think about it. I'm going to ask Craig next time to hold back some block of numbers in the first 100, like 20 numbers for donations.
That's a good idea.
I mean, we'll say we're going to hold 20 numbers back out of the first 100. They will be held for 0001 donations for the coast. And so if you bring donations in, you just get one of those coupons and put them on. And I think, I mean, I'll be really frank with you. I tell everybody this: if you're bringing something in that you're selling for $2, and that's the only thing you're selling, and you come to the auction to have fun and buy some stuff, the problem with having a $2 item in the auction is you just guaranteed you may have to stay till 4:30 until somebody pays for that item. And is it worth the $2 to get the $2 back to have to stay? If you just donate to the coast, then you don't have to worry about it. You just buy whatever you got and leave, and you don't have to wait. But if you have an item sold, you have to wait. So that's actually a benefit of, if you got one item, don't try to do it yourself, just donate it. But I like that, Jesse. I like the idea. I'll talk to Craig about that for the next auction, about getting some, and we'll put an announcement in. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more formal of, coast donations, get a little bit more into it. And by the way, the 325, the 325 I told you does not include any coast auction items. So there's probably another 25 or $40 that gets taken off of that because of the coast donations.
How did the computer data entry and all that sort of stuff go this time?
In the end, I think it all went really well. There was a discussion about one item being mismarked, but I think turned out that was not true. We had one person that was quite concerned that they thought they were not being compensated for what they sold, and after a lot of effort went through and found out that it was exactly right. The computer was correct. So, and by the way, if anyone is interested, is mildly interested, has any potential thoughts of, or knows anyone who would be interested in doing the computer data entry next time, please contact me. Did I tell you I don't want to do it next time? Anyway, but I think overall it went well. I mean, I think the system went better. We're getting better with the system. We've got a bunch of documentation to put together on it, so it'll all be good, I think, going forward.
I'm supposed to get together with Jerry to work on the documentation, so there's better instructions on how to do the various jobs dealing with the computers and software.
Exactly. I think we're getting there. And by the way, we're gonna do the auction in December. We won't do an auction next year, obviously in May, because we've got the convention in April. And so based on what happens in December, we'll decide what we do in December of 2024. I know that seems like that's a long ways off, but this stuff kind of all just builds up on us. Let's talk a little bit about the 2023 convention. I actually put this up, I started with the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I said the ugly wasn't good, so I put the outcome. And originally I didn't have any bullets, and I added some bullets because I kind of added some of my thoughts. I thought it was a good convention from what I'll call the normal convention structure stuff. The clinics were good, the operating sessions were good, the layout tours were good. As you notice, on the bad side, there were a fairly limited number, I felt, of layout tours. The contest room was good. I thought the Western Pacific Historical Society partnership was very interesting from the standpoint of bringing in some interesting content and, of course, attendance. The bad, unfortunately, we were in a fairly small space in the hotel. The way the hotel was structured, there wasn't a lot of room for vendors, etc. There wasn't room for a swap meet. The hotel itself was kind of a smaller hotel. The meals were, I thought, not great. And I didn't actually avail myself of this, but I understood there was no hotel lunch service. And that combined with the only restaurant that was within reasonable distance was a Subway and a Costco, kind of made food a little bit of a challenge. I thought, again, limited number of layout tours. One of the things I talked to a number of folks about was this challenge of tours and layout tours and other activities conflicting with the clinics. And I think that was represented by one of the things I noticed was that a couple of the like the prototype tours to the railroad museum and to their collectives, their archives, didn't really get a lot of attendance. And I would wonder how much of that was because of the conflict with the clinics. And then the clinics running till 9:30, I think becomes kind of a bit of an issue. The outcome, the attendance was not great. Those of you that were there kind of noticed that. And when you combine it with the fact that we also had the WP Historical Society there, one of the things that's clear is that we didn't, as an organization, do a great job in convincing the membership that this was a good event to go to. The other thing that happened here, and this is something, you know, as an organization, we all need to think through. They did a virtual event, and it was pretty much ignored. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 attendees. So, you know, one of the things we need to figure out for the future is there an interest in actually having some sort of virtual convention? Just out of curiosity, how many folks? I know a few folks went. How many folks went to the convention? Just kind of as a show of hands.
Yeah, I did.
So, you know, I think the interesting question is that were those pretty reasonable comments, or are there other comments that you guys had about the convention? Or there any of those not resonate, by the way, comments I made, and then any other input, because want to make sure we kind of use that as feedback going forward.
Just a comment. I know I didn't attend. The virtual, the ticket for the virtual for what was being offered was, I thought maybe a little dismal. One camera, a few clinics for whatever it was, $65 or something. If you feel the people buying the virtual ticket will keep people from the event, then yeah, you want to keep that price up. But you might have had, you know, a lot more people at further away signing in for what was being offered for one camera and just a couple clinics, $25, $30. You might have had 50 more people signing up for it.
So one thing that we've talked about, and I have to say this is kind of my pet thought process, is don't try to do a virtual convention at the same time as the physical convention. So if we do the physical convention in April, pick a weekend. Clearly it wouldn't be this weekend, it might be next weekend because this is Mother's Day. Pick a weekend, you know, 3 weeks after, 2-3 weeks after the convention, and basically do a replay. So the idea is at the convention, you don't have a virtual broadcast, nothing live for virtual people at the convention. Just have the convention physically, but record 1 or 2 clinic rooms, record the contest room, maybe do some layout recording. The idea is to capture some of the content. And then 2 weeks later, have a virtual convention. I think, and again, I tend to agree with 100% with Fran. I think you keep the cost relatively low, because part of the reason for doing this is not just attending the convention, it's using it as an on-ramp for people to think about going physically to a convention. So the idea would be on a Thursday and Friday, or Saturday and Sunday, we basically redo the clinics, i.e. play the video, and then have the clinician come to answer questions, but make that available to virtual attendees who pay maybe $10. I mean, maybe it's not a lot of money to come, quite frankly, but then anyone who went to the regular convention can come to the virtual convention as well. And the idea is then you've got the virtual convention people and the physical convention people actually now interacting because they're all virtual in this replay. So I did kind of see if that it sounds attractive to you. The one comment I've heard from a couple of people is, after the convention, I'm burned out, I don't want to redo it. You know, so maybe 2 weeks is not enough. Maybe it's got to be more. Anyway, I think the reality is, what we've seen is there's a difference with the OPSIG. The OPSIG seems to have the content that attracts people to come to it virtually. The last couple of OPSIGs, it's not clear that traditional conventions have the same attraction, like Fran said, for a virtual side of the event, unless you basically make it very inexpensive. And then, of course, the question becomes, is it detracting from the convention? On the other hand, I think it was such a pale the virtual convention was such a fractional part of the convention. I can't imagine somebody seeing it as replacing going to the convention, personally. So any other comments, thoughts?
Yeah, you might want to cancel this virtual event during the convention, since only Fran, myself, and Ken, and you popped in too. We're attending.
Oh yeah, no, I left it on during the convention because I didn't want to cancel it, and it was, and I told everybody it was going to be pretty mediocre. I apologize. Well, next year,
conversation.
Next year we definitely, if it falls, we definitely will cancel it. We won't have it during our convention next year. Okay, so with that, then the more important thing to do is to move on to talk about the next convention. So I don't know if anyone's seen this, but we have now arrived at both a location and a name and a whole bunch of other things for the Tech Line, which will be our convention for the convention the Coast Division will be doing for 2024. And let me go ahead. I got a little video here. Let me play this little video. And
God, and I thought you loved.
Catch the Tech Line to the 2024 Pacific Coast Region Convention April 24th to 28th, 2024.
You're not seeing the video?
This year we will be
Now it is.
in the heart of Silicon Valley at the Sonesta. This year we will be in the heart of Silicon Valley at the Sonesta San Jose Hotel. The great $139 room rate will be available from Friday before the convention and until 3 days after. The convention will feature the best model railroading in the Coast Division and the rest of the PCR. Each day we will have a full morning and evening clinic schedule with the option of afternoon layout tours, operating sessions, special extended clinics, and local prototype tours. The layout tours will feature some of the most recognizable layouts in the country as well as some new entrants. We currently have over 20 layouts committed to be open and expect to have at least 30 open by the time of the convention. We will have layouts from narrow to wide, from early to late, in all scales. Current layouts committed to be open include Jack Burgess' legendary Yosemite Valley, a railroad that innovated with one of the first double-deck layout designs and a focus on hyperrealism by modeling a specific prototype on a specific date in history. A layout not to be missed. Also open will be Bob Brown's Tuolumne Forks. This ON3 and ON30 layout was built over the years while Bob was the editor of the Narrow Gauge Gazette and features models seen in the publication and much more. Bob has created amazing scenes on his layout. Seth Newman's Union Pacific Oakland sub is a model of an actual branch line that serviced the Fremont NUMMI plant and operates using dispatched signaling. Seth and the UP Oakland sub have been leaders in the operations movement in model railroading. For those into S-scale, the New York Central of Ed Loiseau is a wonderful model of a great railroad, complete with amazing scenery that evokes great eastern valleys and city scenes. If you are into amazing structure modeling, see Ted Stevens' HO Scale Ohio and Little Canal layout that features many outstanding structures built by Earl Gerbevin, Coast Division's most recent NMR. In addition to layout tours, each day there will be operating sessions available, with options for levels of operating experience from casual to intense. Book an operating session and have some railroading fun. A third midday alternative will be a prototype tour. We anticipate having special events with the Niles Canyon Railroad, the Center for Carter Car Preservation at Ardenwood Park, and others. Clinics at the convention will feature some of the best clinicians available. Leading modelers in many different areas will be doing great clinics. We will feature some hands-on make and take clinics, as well as a focus on new technologies that can make for better models. Many leading modelers have already committed to providing a clinic at the PCR 2024 convention. Don't miss this opportunity to renew friendships, meet new friends, learn how to be a much better modeler, see amazing layouts, prototype tours and events, and operate on amazing railroads. It has been 8 years since the last in-person convention in the Coast Division and we are ready to show our modeling and host a great convention. Meet me on the tech line, April 24th to 28th, 2024.
Great video.
So yeah,
Excellent.
and by the way, that's up online. It's on YouTube, and feel free to just share it wherever you can. So I do have also just, we have a little presentation. I just want to walk through it because I think it's kind of hits some of those details a little bit more, as you talk to folks about, somebody asked you about the convention. So, the hotel, we started out, quite frankly, Earl and I took this over. The 2020 convention was going to be in Concord. We had a relationship with the hotel in Concord. I mean, I'm a plagiarist. I believe if somebody's done a good job, you should just plagiarize the heck out of it. And so we just said, easy way to do this is we'll just take this over. It turned out the hotel, and especially the sales guy, just ghosted us completely. And so we ended up having to go out and look for a hotel, and we ended up looking a little bit more down in the Fremont area, and we found this hotel. This is the Sonesta Hotel. It's the Sonesta San Jose. Sonesta has two hotels. One's called the Sonesta San Jose, and the other is the Sonesta Silicon Valley. And you know what that tells anybody who's lived in the Bay Area? While they're both in what town? Has to be Milpitas, because if you don't use the city name, it has to be Milpitas. So the bad news is Milpitas kind of has a bit of a bad reputation. South end of the bay, you got all the marshlands, and it gets some interesting smells and stuff. But you know what? We're not buying a house. And from a convention hotel perspective, guys, I have to tell you, Earl and I kind of walked out. We went in and saw this place and talked to them. We kind of felt like we'd literally hit a jackpot. First off, it's $139 room rate. There's no it's free parking. There's no metered parking. There's none of that. There are no resort fees. So it's $139 plus. I think there's a occupancy tax and that. So it comes out, it's probably in the $150 range by the time you get done, maybe a little higher. But it's very reasonable. One of the beauties of it is the location. It's right at the intersection of 880 and 237. So if you ever driven down 880 and turned on to 237, if you kind of vaguely remember that big hotel you saw there, that was the hotel. The reason that's so great is it actually lets us really feature the entire Bay Area. You can get from there up to Concord. You can get from there all the way down to Santa Cruz and go down to, come around the bend there and come back up through Morgan Hill. Clearly everywhere within the San Jose area is readily attainable, as well as the peninsula and up, the East Bay along the bay. That is going to allow us to have some pretty amazing layout tours where you can go a direction and do some things. One of the things when we started looking at this, realized that the problem with the Concord location is it's really hard to have layout tours in Los Altos from Concord. Because if you finish a layout tour at 4:30, 5 o'clock in Los Altos, and you've got to get to Concord, you have one of the most torturous drives in humanity. I'm sure there's some that are worse, but that's a pretty bad drive if you think about it. So from the perspective of layout tours, prototype tours, the one thing that we probably lost that they were going to do in 2020 was the trolley museum. It's probably a bit far away if you're down this far, but we picked up potentially doing something at Roaring Camp. Definitely, the two very close things, Ardenwood and Niles Canyon, are both within about 5 or 6 miles. So not bad, or maybe 8 miles. So from that perspective, it's very good. The third thing about the hotel is it has really great convention facilities. The second floor of the hotel, kind of if you look there, you can see some windows there right in the entryway on the upper level. That's actually the level where the convention center is at. And I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. It actually gives us the opportunity to have more vendors and a swap meet and some space to do some things we haven't been able to do in some of the more recent conventions. The other thing we've done is we had a long conversation about this, and we really like the way they did this in Roanoke Park. The narrow gauge convention works this way, where what you have is in the morning and the evening, you have clinics. And then during the day, there are other activities than just general clinics. So obviously you'll have, layout tours. We may do some special clinics. Frank and Earl are talking about doing a special make and take or build clinic one day. There'll be a 4-hour build clinic. It really lets you do something really interesting in a 4-hour clinic. We're also talking about maybe doing something around DCC boot camp. One of the things I would love to do is do a 4-hour really introduction to DCC. What is DCC? How do you put decoders in? What do you do on your layout? Introduce JMRI and how you use it. So members that, really have never gone to DCC can think about it, because the beauty of DCC today is a lot of the hard stuff in DCC you don't have to deal with anymore, because you can buy locomotives with DCC installed. So, if you're ready to buy a DCC locomotive, how do you modify your layout? What do you do? And then of course, new technologies like Bluetooth and the Blue NAMI actually allow you to do DCC without even changing your layout. So same thing with the Y throttle and those kind of things. So anyway, that's another option we may have during the day. There'll be prototype tours. There'll be obviously the vendor room, the swap room, modular layouts in the hotel. Layout tours, I think, are going to be pretty amazing. For those of you who were able to join us on September 25th last year, we had, I think, 7 layouts open in the South Bay, 7 or 8. We had 7 planned in the South Coast area when we were going to go down to Roaring Camp. We've had, I think, 7 or 8 layouts open in the North Bay. And there are literally 100 layouts on our target list of potential layouts to be open. And some of these are pretty amazing layouts if you've never seen them. So even for those of us here, it's an opportunity to see layouts. The other thing that I think, and this is very important for us, but also for folks that might think about coming that are out of the area, there are some pretty amazing legends of model railroading. There was a comment often I hear from people, which is, I had the chance to go see John Allen Scoria defeated, but I didn't go because Monterey was too far to drive to, or whatever. I mean, the reality is Bob Brown's 90. Jack Burgess has had a stroke. You saw, Dave Adams has had some health issues. Think back, the last time we had a convention was 8 years ago. Think about the layouts that are not here. Right? I mean, there are a number of layouts of folks that had great layouts that over the past 8 years are not with us. And the same thing if you look forward another 4 years, from 2024 to 2028. So I think this is an opportunity, really an opportunity to see some of the great layouts that may not be there 4 or 5 years from now. It may be a last opportunity. From a clinic perspective, I think we're going to have some really great clinics. We're going to try to really get the clinics focused on doing more skills-focused clinics, more things where you actually get more hands-on learning, as well as new technologies. And we've got a number of clinicians already committed. If you're interested in doing a clinic, by the way, David's here. He'll raise his hand. He's managing the clinic, so let David know. And right now, what we're looking for is, we're not necessarily looking for somebody to come in and say, this is the clinic I want to do. We're actually looking for somebody who says, I know I can do a clinic and I'm willing to do a clinic. Because one of the beauties of deciding to do a clinic in April of 2024 is, what's the beauty of deciding today of doing a clinic in April of 2024?
Lots of time to put it together and
You
make
got a
it
year
smooth.
to take pictures, guys. If you're going to put a model together, you're thinking about building a model, you're thinking about doing something. Fran, you're thinking about doing a new project. Start from the beginning and take 5 pictures a day, and you'll have the most amazing clinic. And in the end, it'll be easy to put together. I mean, it really is true. I mean, you guys have seen the clinic I did about the buildings I built. That was just because I just took pictures all the time. All you saw was a whole whack of pictures, a 400 meg file of pictures, because that's really what tells the story of a project. And the beauty is, we all have, God gave us all one of these.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most amazing for clinics. This is the most amazing. So if you say, look, I'm going to do a clinic in 2024. I know I'm going to I'm going to do scenery on this part of my layout. document it and make that your clinic. And especially if it's something you do where you can bring in some pieces and show some pieces and show how you did it, that's a brilliant clinic. So it's
Phil?
a really great, yeah.
Now, gentlemen, Phil is doing a sales pitch to a few guys here. And what needs to be done, of course, is I need to extract the sales pitch from Phil and turn it into stuff that can be sent out to the broad membership. Partly, Phil, I'm trying to save these guys from getting sales pitched to death, okay? we need to, I think everybody understands the pitch. What we have to do is turn it into a broader thing.
It's just a great opportunity. So we talked about operating sessions. The ops sig is going to put those together. One of the things we're going to try to do, we talked a bit with Seth about this idea of having operations that are casual, focused, or intense, depending upon, whether they use a simple forwarding system or they have a complex timetable and train order type system. So great opportunity there. You heard about these. This, I think, for all of us, we recognize we're actually starting some discussions with Jack and Jackie Burgess about the Carter brothers and Ardenwood, and going to have some conversation with Niles Canyon about trying to do something really interesting at Niles Canyon as well, something more than normal. For those of you that have a spouse, the non-rail space is brilliant. They have this room that kind of feels like an apartment without a bedroom. And that'll actually be the non-rail room. And you'll see in the drawing here on the next, it's kind of right in the middle of the convention space. So this is actually the space we're in. So what you see is that kind of ignore that block on the lower left. That's just the lower level. But what you do is you come off the elevators and you come into an open area that is open with glass out to the front and down with a balcony to the check-in area down below. And you come in off the elevators to the left, kind of you go into the ballroom there. We're going to take a third of the ballroom for the contest. The rest of the ballroom will be for modules, vendors, and swap meet, as will the space kind of below the ballroom there. That corridor walkway out there has space as well. If when you come off the elevators, you go to the right, you kind of come around the corner, there's that non-rail room, and then there will be the 3 clinic rooms. So we have there's quite a bit of space there, as you can see. And again, what we'll do is we'll take that ballroom, and that's where banquets and breakfasts will be on Saturday after we take down all of those things. So one of the things we are looking at potentially doing, I note this on the bottom left. So I talked to a number of vendors, and the comment I kind of got from vendors once you have a discussion with them is, coming to a convention with 150 people, even 200 people for 3 days is not necessarily a great economic decision. There's just not, if I'm selling something that 30% of the people are interested in, my market opportunity is just not that big. But when you actually say, well, what if the public, i.e. the rest of the membership, could come in just to that area, then all of a sudden the vendors get more interested, which of course makes it more interesting for the convention as well. So one of the things we're considering is having on Friday from noon to 9, and on Saturday from 9 to probably 2-ish, we'll have to start tearing down. Actually having that vendor swap area in the contest room open to essentially probably PCR members or NMRA members, and then the public for a small fee, like a $5 fee or something like that. And we would actually advertise that. So we're kind of considering that. And again, by the way, I'm saying all these things, so I'm looking for 2 things. One is feedback, but also if anyone's interested in getting involved and kind of helping to drive some of that, we have somebody who's going to look at doing a swap meet, but we're also need to talk about engaging vendors. One of the other things that considered is the idea of having a consignment corral. So instead of having just a pure swap meet, because kind of the problem with a swap meet is you kind of have to buy a table, and if you don't have enough to buy a table, then you have to get together with other people, et cetera, et cetera. But if we have an area where you can just bring an item, put a price on it, and leave it, if it sells, someone collects the money, and then there's a fee for handling it, and call it kind of consignment corral or consignment location. So we may consider doing that also. We really need to make the decisions on that in probably the next month. So If you're interested in having input, let me know, let Earl know, and we'll go from there. From a cost perspective, obviously the room rate to me is very interesting from, a couple of perspectives. Obviously, if you're coming from out of town, the room rate's very interesting. For those of us in the Bay Area, it actually presents a really interesting option, which is, drive down Thursday morning, go ahead and check into the hotel on Thursday, spend Thursday night and Friday night in the hotel, and then go home on Saturday night. The advantage that gives you is that on Thursday and Friday, you're there at the convention. If you stay late or you start early, you don't have to worry about trying to commute and drive in. One of the nice things about this location for a convention is actually bad for local attendees. It turns out when you look at that golden triangle there, which is basically 237, 101, and 880, that's kind of the heart of the Silicon Valley, the heart of the kind of core tech industry, call it. What's interesting about that area is the ratio of people that live there to the people that work there is about 2 orders of magnitude towards people that work there, which means that all the roads are built to bring lots of people in the morning, and there's lots of congestion coming in the morning and going back at night, which is great for a convention where you go out at noon to do layout tours and you drive back at 5 o'clock, which means you're counter commute when you come back. The challenge for us is if you live in Pleasanton, where I do, or you live in Concord, or you live in Albany, getting down to Milpitas at 9 o'clock on a Thursday or Friday morning is a bit of a challenge. So I personally would argue that the couple $100 or $300 for the hotel room probably is worth it to avoid the commute and be able to go to the bar at 9 o'clock and not have to get in your car and drive home so you can sleep. But I think that's a great point. The convention fares, they're a little bit higher. They're $185, $165 on the early bird. Quite frankly, that is totally driven 100% by the food and beverage charges. The food and beverage charges, we were getting quoted almost doubled from 2020. The problem for these hotels is post COVID in California, getting people to work and provide food service in hotels is becoming a real challenge. On the other hand, a hotel with $179 room rate, if you stay for 2 nights, that's $80. So compared to the fare, it's a small percentage. We decided that getting the room rate at a reasonable rate in Silicon Valley was the most important thing, and a few more bucks on the fare really didn't matter that much. So there also are fares, of course, available for no meals. If you're just interested in coming to the convention, especially that's good if you decide to just stay till Saturday and go home Saturday night. So kind of close with, and I'm not going to go through these, this is the top 10 reasons why you want to go to the convention. I think it's really a great location, not only to see people that for those that have done it before, but it's a great place to meet new people. And we will probably do some things to try to have more interaction and people talking next year. So that was basically all I had on the convention. So any comments, or we'll just jump into modeling.
Well, Phil, on the rates, have you considered a weekend only rate for people who work during the week and just want to attend during the weekend?
There's a day rate for Saturday. You can just do the day rate for Saturday. That's the right way to do it.
Okay.
Because really Sunday is just breakfast. And, and we didn't actually separately price the meals because quite frankly, the reality is that the primary rate is pretty much priced for what the meals cost.
Okay. Well, how about if you wanted to, come on Saturday, but want to attend the breakfast on Sunday?
We'll figure out something special for that. We didn't put a price point in. We'll figure out something special for it.
Okay.
And by the way, there will be, for those that are interested, we don't have it up on the website yet. Bill Scott and I are working on it. There will be a hobo breakfast on Saturday. The current plan is there's a Black Bear Diner, which is on the other side of, if you've driven, a lot of us have driven 237 across. If you've driven 237 across to 680, it's right there in Milpitas. So, and they have a nice back room that's private. So My assumption is we'll probably end up getting that for the hobo breakfast.
On clinics, how long does a clinic, if a clinician's giving a clinic, how long is the typical presentation time for a clinic?
So that's actually a decision we need to close on. So this year, what they did was they had hour clinics, but then they had a break between them that was almost, and it turns out having those long breaks is nice, but it makes the clinic time block a bigger time block. And so that's kind of the trade-off. Do we make the time block smaller? Because if you compress the clinics down, then that gives you more time in the afternoon. My assumption right now, the assumption is they're hour blocks, which means the clinics are going to be about 50 minutes and then about 10 minutes to go between the clinics. But we haven't really closed on that. I mean, the other option is to start at 8:30 and have the clinics be an hour and then have 15 minutes between them.
Okay, but that 50 minutes would also include Q&A time, right?
Right, exactly.
So the actual presentation would be shorter.
Yeah, probably like 40 minutes, make it 45 minutes. Yep. So, and we'll close on that before we send anything out and engage any clinicians.
Well, we will engage clinicians at any time that somebody says, "Hey, I'd like to do a clinic," and we'll gladly take those names down. I'll take names down here right now if anybody has an urge to clinic in 2024. But Phil, of course, is talking about some of the details of, okay, what are the actual time slots and so on.
So let's ask that question. So, so the trade-off is if you make clinics an hour and you allow more time between clinics, then you have to start at 8:30. So if you start at 8:30, if you figure an hour and an hour and a half an hour in between, that says it takes 4.5 hours to do 3 clinics. So that means that if you start at 8, right, you're going to finish at 12:30. So that gives you an hour per clinic and a half an hour between them, but you have to start at 8 to finish at 12:30 so you can do the afternoon things. So that's kind of that would be kind of option 1. Option 2 is you start at 9 and you go to 12 and each clinic slot is an hour and that includes 5 or 10 minutes for change. So you don't have that half hour between each clinic for people to kind of gather around and talk. You kind of go to clinics and then you're done with the clinic time block. So I'm curious about which appeals to people. Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, having been to a gazillion conventions in a professional way, no, and that sort of stuff. There's 2 things that immediately come to mind. One is that for many clinics, the Q&A is way more important than what the clinician has as a prep. And that's just something to think about. The second thing is that it's 9 to 10, it's 10 o'clock, and I don't know about you, but I probably want to go back to my room and pee or some combination thereof. And that's going to take me in a hotel like that at least 15 minutes. So that's something to think about also, that a lot of our members, a lot of the people showing up will probably not necessarily want to stand around and chat, but go do minor things after a clinic or even just check their emails. So those are 2 thoughts.
I'll go with you. Well, here.
That's great input. I mean, the other option is to kind of pick the compromise in between and do an hour clinic and a 15-minute changeover. And then we start at 8:30 and we finish at 12:15. I mean, and by the way, guys, I have no preconceived notions about what to do. I'm really just trying to get everybody's input to it. To me, I can kind of make the argument that boom, 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 boom is best, just get her done. But I think you bring up a great point, Jess, that if you want to go use the restroom and you're not comfortable and you're not comfortable using the facilities there that are downstairs, going back to your room is going to be a 15-minute. So allowing for that. So maybe that is a better way to do it, is we do and by the way, there's no reason to change. changing this stuff is just changing a little bit of stuff on the website at this point. But
I'm
that's what I
with-
want to do before. What I was saying before is, before anybody actually commits to a specific clinic, I think you want to know what the time frame is. But I think that's a great idea.
I'm with Jesse, by the way, Phil, on this.
You know, when it comes to, I agree with Jesse that, the Q&A seems to be a lot of times the thing that gets shortchanged. You get people who want to ask questions and also, oh, we're out of time, we got to go. So I'm thinking, maybe 30 minutes for the clinic, 15 to 20 minutes for the Q&A, and then you've got 10 to 15 minutes between within the hour.
But I think the point is, maybe we're shortchanging ourselves. Maybe the right way to do it is we'll start at 8:30 instead of 9, and we'll finish at 12:15. And
There's
then in the evening,
there's also, Phil, the possibility of flexing clinic times. That is to say, every clinic does not have to be exactly so many minutes. It may be somebody has a short clinic and somebody has a bigger bite.
Yeah.
And so I think that some flexibility here, because there's some people I think would be more comfortable with, I've got a 15-minute or a 20-minute thing, and we have some Q&A, and then some other person that yammers on a lot like me. I do 8-hour clinics in my profession. They're 8-hour tutorials, flat out. There's a lot of stuff to convey, and so there can be I think a possibility of saying we have some short windows, some longer windows, and see if that maybe encourages more clinicians.
Yeah, one of the things when I did I did a clinic up in Sacramento for their convention, and I was shocked. I walk in, and the room is packed, and I had my presentation ready to go, and the questions during and after, because I just had lots of people in the room, and I said, and I won't say I wasn't ready for it, but I was surprised. And
that's because you're famous,
Q&A,
Jesse.
no, that's the poster, and that's my brother Jesse James with the number on top. Yeah, the dollar. Yeah.
Dead or alive.
Dead or alive.
Anyway, thoughts for you, Phil?
Yeah, no, that's great, guys. That's really what I was looking for. Really, what I was looking for was just some feedback and thought processes, because, really the trade-off here is wanting to have as much time as possible for other activities, for those afternoon activities. Now, one of the other things we've had a conversation about is, so we have 3 clinic rooms. If we use one of those in the afternoon for a 4-hour DCC intro or a 4-hour scenery clinic, we still have a second room. So one of the questions that we were thinking about was that you could use during that time that one of those other clinic rooms to do some clinic repeats. So, that's the other question from both the clinician perspective. Would you be willing to repeat the clinic if it was in the afternoon? Because that kind of, so one of the problems I noticed in Sacramento was, for example, I had a clinic on Friday, which basically precluded me doing any layout tours on Friday because my clinic was in the middle of the layout tour block. So the same thing's true. If you have a clinic and you do a repeat of the clinic on Thursday afternoon when layout tours are on, that means you're not going to probably be able to go for any of the layout tours. But that is another option. And then the question there is, what's the right way to select which clinics to ask to repeat? And one of the thoughts was to actually ask people that were attending maybe a couple of months before to rank the clinics they'd like to attend, and the ones that are highly ranked, ask them to repeat the clinic. I don't know. That's again something we're trying to figure out is, how do we ask some of the clinicians potentially to repeat clinics? Because if we take one room and we assume we can get 3 or 4 slots on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, what clinics would we put in there in the afternoon? So, and of course the clinicians have to agree. That's the other side of it.
The other thought on clinics, by the way, is I've just had a nice dinner and that sort of stuff, and I'm feeling mellow with my several glasses of wine, and I'm not really in the mood to attend somebody's clinic, and God forbid, give one in the evening. I think that if we had to shorten things, I'm a real believer in, I don't like after dinner clinics as much if necessary. You know,
Yeah, but
if you can't get
unfortunately,
people to repeat, then you could, you know, maybe just one clinic after dinner.
that really cuts down the number of clinics. So the problem with this is you're
Just a
kind of
thought.
caught between the hard and so rock and the hard place. Once you decide you want to try to keep the afternoons available for tours and that kind of pushes you to these. And again, part of the thing on the evenings is to try to keep it from going too late. You know, but you still want to start you don't want to start much more at about 6:30 because that gives people time to get back from a layout tour and pick up something to eat before they come in. By the way, the one thing I didn't mention that is absolutely really great about this place is it is next to the best cornucopia of Asian delights in the South Bay. The shopping center, there's a shopping center right between the hotel and 880, which is just literally lined with restaurants that cater to the high-tech lunch trade. And so there's a huge set of predominantly within walking distance, predominantly Asian restaurants. But if you get in your car and drive to the other side of 237 or 880, there's a whole bunch of just miscellaneous restaurants. So there's the Egg Roll King too, which if you want egg rolls, you can get the Egg Roll King. But there used to be a Denny's. The Denny's
Come on,
is
Larry,
now the
I'll
egg.
meet you. Larry, I'll meet you for miscellaneous dinner.
Yeah. But no, it'll be if you know the hotel. And by the way, the hotel food was actually when we went over and looked at the hotel, we had lunch there, and the hotel food they actually kind of played up the fact they have a chef. We met the chef, and the food was actually really pretty good. So the problem is a year from now, who knows what happens the next year to anybody.
Yeah.
But right now, it seemed pretty good.
Yeah. For non-real stuff, you know, like your significant other, the Great Mall isn't that far away either.
Oh yeah, the Great Mall is right down the road too, and you know, and that's the other thing I'm looking for. We do need someone who's willing to do the non-rail, kind of help manage the non-rail. So if anyone knows someone who's interested in doing that, that would be great. The one thing I'd love to get is someone who can start a little early, because I think there's a real interesting opportunity to potentially do some actual interesting non-rail tours and things. You know, for example, I think it'd probably be interesting to suggest going to like the Winchester Mystery House. I wonder how many people have ever been there. If you've never been there, it's a pretty interesting trip to do, and it's, you know, it's about an 5 to 8 mile drive to go from where we are to the Winchester Mystery House. You do it in the afternoon. I mean, you kind of think about the Bay Area, not from a railroad perspective, but the South Bay from places to visit and things to do. There are a lot of really interesting things to do for a non-rail. Probably a lot of which people even who live in the Bay Area have never done.
Two things, Phil. Has anybody reached out to the model railroad store are they in San Jose?
You're talking about the train shop. No,
train shop.
Ridge. Yeah, they're on Prune Ridge.
Prune Ridge,
Yeah.
right. That's one. The other thing is for the non-rail, I think one of the activities or sessions there should be, once they've been to Just Drains, how do you keep them down on the farm? That joke just went right by. Never mind.
That was a joke?
That was a joke. You guys, do you remember? Thank you very much, Jesse. You were very kind. Lots to do. I'm just going to be looking right now for clinicians is my main responsibility at the moment. I don't know if I have responsibilities in terms of putting together the clinic schedule, clinic windows, all that sort of stuff right now.
All down the road.
So
you know,
if any of you, Fran or Larry or Jesse, or the other folks that are listening in here, raise your hand. Let me know you would like to take okay, Fran. Larry or Jesse, are you guys up for as any sort? Okay, so we've got Jesse and Frank.
I'm thinking about it. I don't know if anybody would be interested in what I have to say, but I'm thinking.
You'd be amazed, Larry.
Mhm.
Your parole officer, if nobody else. Well, I'm going to put all
Okay.
three of you down as potential clinicians, okay?
Okay. By the way, if anybody goes over to Winchester Mystery House, just a block down the street is Santana Row and also Valley Fair. So, they could all
Yeah.
have, lunch or something right in that area.
Yeah, and see that's why I'm not sure they did any of that in Sacramento, and I think it'd be great to have a couple of those kind of events, on the non-rail, because there are lots of interesting things to do. So I need to find someone who's kind of willing to take it on, kind of, and manage it. But as David will tell you, we're not going to do what happened in Sacramento. I talked to folks in Sacramento, and they said that the person who did the layout tours disappeared for 6 months and didn't do anything. And it's kind of like, well, what did everybody else do? Well, they watched him do nothing. We're not going to be like that. David will tell you he's getting lots of help. So anybody who volunteers, you'll get lots of help. You won't be thrown into doing something on your own. We'll make sure we do it as a team. That's the way stuff gets done right.
Phil, I'm assuming that you are going to be too busy to do any clinics in 2024, given your responsibilities. Is my assumption correct? Okay.
Probably, yeah.
That's
and
fine.
Earl's going to do I think Earl's going to do the clinic with Frank. They're talking about doing that. So I think probably put Earl and me that way. I don't know. I can probably do one. You can put me down to do one. I can do one. It's not a big deal. It's once this stuff starts going, it gets to be kind of autopilot. Unless there's a disaster.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being willing to raise your hands. And notice I'm not saying what you're going to do a clinic about. We got lots of time for something to bubble up in your head to say, hey, I'd like to do blah. That's not the thing. It's just to get potential clinicians at this point. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. So we got any interesting modeling. We've been talking a lot about organizational stuff. I seem to be getting, it's kind of like that. I feel like that young engineer who's all excited about his engineering and designing stuff, and all of a sudden becomes a supervisor and has that realization that you can't ever go back. You end up spending all your time doing people stuff, not doing the fun stuff that you thought your career was going to be about.
You've gone to the dark side, you say.
So we've spent an hour actually talking about what I'm going to call organizational stuff. It's now time to talk about why we're really here, which is modeling. So,
yeah, well, if you remember, as an engineering supervisor, it seemed that magically, when I was the supervisor, when the people stuff screwed up, guess what? It was my fault. When the design stuff screwed up, guess what? It was my fault. You can go back.
Yeah. That was, I don't know if you ever heard that story, the story of the 3 letters. This guy takes a new job, and the guy who's just gotten fired says, by the way, there are 3 letters in the drawer for you. And he opens the letter, and the first letter says open on the first product slip. Second letter says open on the second product slip. Third letter says open on the third product slip. So he puts them back in the drawer and goes along, and a couple of months later they have a big product slip. He opens the first envelope, and the first envelope says blame your predecessor. So he comes in and blames the guy that just left. He screwed it up so totally. A couple of months later, another product slip opens the second envelope. It says blame your staff. So he comes in and he just blames the staff. These guys are idiots. They blew it completely. A couple of months later, as the third product slip opens the third letter, and of course what it says is prepare 3 letters.
It sounds like being a project manager where you
I always thought that was just, to me, that was just the whole thing of, the first thing you do is you blame everybody who just left, then you blame the incompetence around you, and then you get blamed and you leave.
Yeah.
As I said, it's a project manager for you. You've got all the responsibility, none of the authority, and you get all of the blame.
Yep.
I can't blow the whistle. I can't ring the bell. But when the train jumps the track,
see who catches hell.
Exactly. So, yep, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
I do have some stuff to share. Actually,
Cool, go for
driven by the auction activities at the auction. Let's see here. Does you guys see an image from off my iPad?
Yep.
Yep.
Item number 1 was this poor thing. This little, come on, where are you? There's the camera. Ah, there. This F unit for years rode back and forth on the spine of the cubicles where I worked for many years. I built a track that ran along the spine, power supplies put in, and push buttons, left, go right, in all the cubicles so my coworkers could run a train back and forth. There was a car for candy, a car for family pictures, so on and so forth. But it took many trips to the ground. You can see what's left of the pilot. It's all broken up. The thing just was pulverized. And so at the auction, lo and behold, one of the boxes, which had a bunch of odds and ends, included this guy. And I said, ooh, look, a replacement shell for this guy. And so it turned out Walthers through Amazon sold a dress-up kit for F7s. And the handrails were really very nice. Sizes and everything else matched very well with the holes that you drilled. Plus it had little templates with the instructions that came with the kit. So I was able to drill the holes and mount, painted and then mounted the handrails, and that was nice. It included even templates here for the roof, and that all went well. But just to warn you, if you get the dress-up kit from them, the window inserts were useless to pour. I've got the windows in here in the front, and it's like, for my level of modeling, because I've realized at this point in my modeling life, I'm not a super detailer anymore, that you stand back a few feet, you can say, yeah, there are windows in there. What they provided for the little side windows was abysmally bad. I ended up using cutting back the this is the shell of the locomotive. This is the outside of the shell. This is the inside. And so what I did is what you want is you want to have a clear plastic insert like this. What was provided in the dress-up kit was something that looked like this, just miserable joke. So I ended up cutting away here and here so I'd have a narrow rim, and then used the micro crystal clear window stuff to put windows in. And it's not great, but it's better than what they had. And again, you look at a distance, you go, okay, there's windows in there. I've got to get the decals on now, SP on the nose, and then what I need to do is I have to take this botched up DCC install and clean it up on the drive and put better headlights in. So those are that's one thing. And this was inspired by the auction to say, hey, look, there's a better shell, plus it's my railroad, the Southern Pacific, that I can put on top of this drive, which is a carefully reworked Athearn mechanism. The other thing I got in the auction was a essentially unmarked, what are you doing? Essentially unmarked center beam car. Somebody looked like they repainted something and had a couple of badly done decals, but that lumber load I purchased about 30 years ago. It's a plastic piece, 2-part plastic piece that was for a 73-foot car. So I got my hobby saw, cut it off, then added some weights and replaced the lousy plastic wheels with metal wheels. You guys see the red paint there? Anybody notice the red paint? I screwed up big time. It had one weight sort of floating around loose, hadn't been glued in. I said, oh, I want to get the weight out by the truck. So I cut the weight in half and positioned it down by the trucks and shot myself right in the foot because the edges of the wheels touched the weight. And so I had to sit for half an hour with a Dremel and a carbide cutter cutting the steel weight away in this area painted red. so that the wheels wouldn't touch and short out short out the DCC, and then redo the couplers. There's KD pockets in there now. And then the last thing I did, and this comes from my activities in operations. I've been able to participate now in some real operations. And one of the things that drove me mad was cars where you could not read the reporting marks. You know, you're sitting there with a ticket in your hand saying, you're supposed to take this car. Which one is it? Because all there is a very well heavily weathered car and reporting marks you cannot read, even with a flashlight. So I just grabbed some decals I had. Yes, the cotton belt probably doesn't have center beam cars of this vintage. Don't care. What I wanted was a readable, legible reporting mark, and I'm not going to weather it out and spoil the usefulness of the car. So those, again, driven by acquisitions at the auction, were two projects I've jumped into. I will remark that some of the things I got at the auction I've thrown away. I looked at them and went, yeah, it had one item in the box I wanted, that Southern Pacific F unit shell. The other cars, I think they had KD couplers. I took the KD couplers off and then pitched the rest of the car in the garbage. Because it's like, no, I'm not going to rescue something that crude.
So David, you've missed the whole auction concept.
I have?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, we grew up in Reading, and we lived out in the country. I mean, I think there were 5 houses within a mile of my house. So I lived out in the middle of nowhere. And on Saturdays, they had an auction. And there was a place you went to, and they had a couple of buildings. And one of them was like a building without walls. It was just a roof, but it was big, maybe 150 feet by 40 feet or something like that. And then they were on a couple of acres, and literally the auction would go from 8 or 9 till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And they would just walk around the auctioneer, and he would auction off everything. And, my favorite was when they would get to a toilet seat. And, the used toilet seat would be in a box, the toilet seat and the cover of the toilet seat. And the auctioneer would pick it up and he'd say, "Oh, we got ourselves a picture frame and a cutting board." And I remember, I was a kid, I was like 7, 8 years old. And I remember this stuff, 9 years old, going to these auctions with my dad. But what my dad would do is he would buy 4 boxes at the auction, buy them for $1 or $2, take them home, take the 2 things he wanted out of each box, take a couple of things from the boxes he had at home, throw them back in, mix them up a little bit, and take back 4 boxes to the next auction and sell them. And so the problem is, you shouldn't have thrown them away. You should have a box where you put all that stuff in, and that you take that back to the auction next time. Because the reality is, whoever threw out that whoever took that SP shell to the auction felt the same way about it as you did the stuff you threw away.
Yeah, I take your point, but no.
I'll be really frank with you. I have not bought anything at the auction because most of it is HO stuff. If I was in HO and I was building a layout in HO, I'd be buying a lot more stuff and doing exactly what I just said. I'll look in a box, there's one thing I want in there. I'll buy that box for $1 or $2, take that item out, and always bring back a couple of boxes. I mean, it's the concept of recycling. In the end, you don't pay for anything because what you sold the next week was what you paid the week before. And you took out what you wanted. And if you curate a little bit better, if you're a bit of a curator, and you got to realize, think about the auction materials in a place like Reading. If you kind of curate them and you put the plumbing stuff in one box and the construction stuff in one box, you take them from 2 boxes all mixed up, put them and curate them. You get $1 more because you curate them, because people say, "Oh, I need plumbing stuff." A box of junk doesn't sell as well as a box of plumbing supplies.
All right. And my last item was this. This was an SD70M, an Athearn SD70M that I got in the auction. And it turns out I decided that I looked at it and the condition it was in and the wreckage of the handrails and stuff. And then I went online and looked for replacement parts, and it didn't look real good. What I instead did is I eBayed a brand new in the box SD70M, And this one becomes a spare parts for that new unit. I have a motor, I have the power trucks, I have the axles, I have the drive system stuff. And so that's going to be my spare part. This guy's becoming the spare parts for the new SD70M. So that was my other auction thing that prompts me to do some more work. All right, who else has done some interesting modeling stuff? Come on, Larry, you've been doing something, I know. No?
I'm working on my first 3D
You're
printed
muted, Larry.
UTL.
You're working on your first. You're wait. Did Fran just say he's becoming a hoe?
Oh dear.
I can't believe it, Fran. I never would have expected it of you.
I'm sorry, but this is a contract.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, there are two comments that come out of that based on the earlier comment and getting paid for it, and I won't make any.
Be nice, Phil.
If you enable sharing, I can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. I always forget. I don't know how to do it in the base meeting. I haven't figured it out. I got to go back and do that.
So I'm not sure. I wasn't sure what it would be like. I've only done ON30, so like wall thicknesses. I've done so many. It's kind of natural to eyeball a lot of stuff and get the CAD done without a whole lot of calculations and measuring. But this is a CR8. This is a Plymouth. I think this is the heaviest Plymouth ever made. CR8, 45 to 65 tons. And one of our friends here needs it for his Oakland sub, and I guess it's not on the market. So it's interesting for a Plymouth. Kind of heavy. It's got this shark nose look to it. You can see that one's Kaiser.
Well, yeah, you could be. I think you'd be more. Seth Newman has the Kaiser aggregates plant that Earl Gerbavon built on his land. It's about 6 feet. It's about a 6 foot long model. Pretty amazing. And I think this is the engine to be able to run over and service that, which is what Kaiser had there to move the cars around at the plant.
I can see the Raymond Loewy industrial design styling there, definitely.
Well, the cool thing about this one is that it's got the front of the nose is right forward a little bit, where the drawing one, if you notice, was flat. And I thought that, Fran pointed that out. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I presume this is a fuel tank on each side under the radiator, just because of the nozzle on it. I don't know, but
Could it be a sandbox?
I guess it could be, but sandbox, usually you'd have a bigger hatch when of course, maybe you can't see it, but you need to pour the sand in versus putting a fuel nozzle in. Let's see. I can come in here. So this is where I'm at so far.
Just to the left of the Plymouth, maybe the sand hatch.
Right here.
Yeah, that's a guess.
I'll have to try to find. Yeah, you're right. It's a larger door, and it gives a little bit of headroom. Headroom for flow from something more vertical. So anyway, it's coming together slow. I'm not sure if I have things too thick, but the strength of the material is injection molded stuff like from Athearn and all. That's going to be stronger per millimeter of thickness. So we'll see how that goes.
Hmm.
It's going together quicker than I thought. I think I'm doing this more and more that more and more that maybe I'm getting somewhere with this.
Question, Fran.
Yeah.
This is just pure guessing here, but not even that. But it just do 3D printers have the ability to change the material being printed during a run? That it, like you're doing red, you're printing red, and then you could switch it out and then print green.
Filament printers that are made for that have two print heads will do it. Resin printers, no, because all the stock material is in a vat that you're actually working in.
So you can, if you know what you're doing with a regular filament printer, you can put basically what's called a pause in the G-code file. And so what happens when it hits a pause in the G-code file is the head it'll stop, and it'll wait for you to hit the input to start again. And what you can do is you can use that to change the filament out and change the color. So when you do a filament printer, the color is purely by layer, right? So it's printing a layer, so it's one color or another. So, so if you change the color, I mean, think about it, it's like an inkjet printer that as it goes across the page moves down. You can just print one color, but then if you change the color, you can print the next color on the next line. If you want to put blue, it's the next line. So you only can print one color at a time.
All right. The reason I'm asking this is, having had the annoyance of trying to put decent windows in the F unit, I just think it would be neat if you could print clear in the holes where the windows are and just have the windows be part of the print. It's probably completely unfeasible, just an idle thought.
Well, the way you can do it is you print the whole thing clear and then just paint it. Because like if you look at that, if you look at when Fran gets in, I'll show his pictures. Fran printed me some 3D. He printed me some 3D stuff for my for the ships that are the little light fixtures, and those were all printed clear, and then they were painted. I don't know how the windows would look in clear, Fran. You'd have to comment on that.
My experience with the clear, to get it window looking, you need to polish it down to about 1600 grit. It's still, it's not like, doesn't come out like glass. If you print the clear flat on the print head, where there's no layer lines,
right?
It's close to clear. But if you're printing it horizontally, every little layer line, 0.005 millimeters, there is something there that has to be polished out. And acetate is so much easier.
That is to cut window material and put it in.
Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you. If you're designing, you can put what I've started to do, put little ledges on the insides of the walls to make it easier to slip the acetate into the slot, or just even have a ledge that it can sit on while you're gluing it in.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds like a great way to do that. I wish that the Athearn shells weren't so crude to do, so that I could drop acetate in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil, that's one of the printed pieces.
This is actually what Fran printed here. So this is probably, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch in diameter. This is O scale. These wires basically run down through, and that's the power coming up, and then there's an LED soldered there. But these were painted clear, and then this was painted over with a couple of coats of primer. But they're pretty small. these guys. I think the like these here, they're pretty small and painted, but they're clear here. But these have little ridge lines, so you can't really see them that much. But that works. That'd be interesting to try. It'd be interesting to try something like might be an interesting thing to do, Fran, to try doing, a whole a frame in clear and then paint it and see how it looks when you do that. So
Well, now the thing is, Fran, the stuff that you're printing on this job will be painted anyway, right?
Yeah, filament and resin. For the modeling, we all do. The quality, the surface quality, the color quality, the sometimes the shininess quality, it's not worthy.
Right.
So
right.
we got to paint and paint everything.
Very interesting. Thank you. Who else?
And with the filament, you kind of if you want to get it smooth, it's a challenge in either area. If you print it on the print surface, it's relatively smooth, but it tends to have a little bit of pattern in it. If it's the top, it tends not to be smooth because it's either layers, or if you use the ironing, it doesn't get really smooth. And then if it's the side, it's got the layers kind of pop out. So kind of no matter where you are in a filament print, there's something that makes it not that smooth. I mean, it looks great when you look at it from 3 feet away, but when you get up and take a photo of it 3 inches away or 4 inches away in a near scene, you're going to see it. So that's why, the filler primer works good, or what Fran does is Fran just does a lot of sanding.
Right.
Fran sands more than anybody I know.
It's a habit. It's okay though. Well, I think that what Fran says about just planning in the print to create a ledge so that you don't have to hand fit. I've done that. Hand fit every piece of acetate, especially when the holes are oval with rounded edges, to try to make it look really nice. Is just a pain in the keister.
Well, the other thing you can do is you can, in 3D print, windows with the shapes. Once you get it designed to fit now replicating them is easy. And then if they're just flat pieces, then I think, get back to Fran's, the 1600 grit, if you want to sand them, you can, or you print them flat.
Right.
If you put them flat in the resin printer, then you're not going to, the lines are going to be on the sides where you don't see them. So maybe you could get a really nice clear. I know All Nations, he was selling, but I think they were filament printed clear windows. He was selling windows that he'd printed. The problem with the filament printed clear is, it's clear, but it's not super clear.
Right.
You see line structures more in that.
Well, over the years, my fleet of locomotives have gotten various approaches to windows. Who remembers the vacuum formed windows?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not very clear either, but they were easy to install and they were a decent fit.
Almost all of my own personal models, I use a fogged window. I don't want to see inside. I don't do that. If I did an interior, I would. But I love the fogginess. And if you were standing back 100, 200 foot, and you weren't at a locomotive that's freshly released from the factory, the windows are going to have a dirty fogginess to them. I don't know if that comes.
Right.
But this material is like an acetate. This is actually material that my CPAP masks come in. And it's fogged just right. It has like a sandblasted side and a shiny side, so you can pick either. But so 3D printing that might be kind of easier than just than trying to sand down to 1600 grit. Printing it and just putting a bit of, it's almost like a dull coat. Only it's permanent.
So the other thing to do is to do what this is what's his name? Jim Cleveland. This is Frenchman River Model Works. There's a resin kit print cast. It's a resin kit,
Mhm.
But what he does is he cuts right here. There's a cut in on the outside, and then he has laser cut acetate that's cut to that shape. And you just put it in. I just put a little tiny touch of canopy glue there and
Yeah.
pop those in, and they look really good. So you could actually do that, Fran. Don't try to put them on from the inside, because then you got to remove a lot of material. Put them in from the outside. Just make a little channel there to put the windows in, and then get get somebody with a laser cutter to cut a sheet of acetone windows.
Mm.
Because you can cut them in exact dimensions with those. I mean, when I first saw them, I thought, oh, these don't fit very well on the inside. And then I realized they don't go on the inside; they go on the outside. And you do all the finishing and put them on. And I thought they came out brilliantly.
Well, the thing is,
But
in the prototype, the glass is most usually pretty flush with the outside.
that's why I think he did it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works out pretty well. But by the way, before I take this down, I did a clinic at the convention about using PowerPoint to do signs and decals and all sorts of stuff. So like these decals here were done in PowerPoint and printed with a laser printer at the local FedEx. One of these notice they actually have built into them colors, so you see the color through in certain places. So it makes the lettering look more aged. So like if you look down here at this one, you can kind of really see it down here in the California Powder Works, like where the A's and some of them are kind of becoming see-through. So that was one of the techniques that I showed. That I guess the question is, would that be interesting to do as a clinic on a Saturday? Would people would have interest in that?
Yeah.
I think so, but the background of being able to do the whole PowerPoint thing is a couple clinics in itself before
Right.
you get to the weathering.
No. What I did this on Nutrax. Is I did 10, they were supposed to be 5-minute segments. A lot of them ended up being 10-minute segments. But basically what each one was a chunk of, what is PowerPoint? How do you drive basic objects in it? How do you actually make, use it to do a sketch? So one of the things I showed was, you want to do a railroad crossing sign. How do you do that? And then I went through, getting the 4x6 photo prints, doing decals, doing large prints. And then so each one was kind of because I use PowerPoint as kind of just a tool to do lots of, that, Fran, lots of stuff. And so it was kind of just trying to go through how to do that. And this was the decals part of it. I really didn't even talk about using the decals or weathering the decals or any of that. It was just how you make them. So if there's interest in that, I'll probably try to schedule that for some point. I'm going to do the same. One of the things I would talk to David about is doing the same thing we did last year, which is go back and look at the convention website and pick out 5 or 6 clinics and go ask the clinician to do them on a Saturday for us. Because I think that's a great way of redoing the clinics. And then since the clinics, some of the clinics were recorded, but they weren't recorded for public. Anything we do here, I'll put up on YouTube. I'll start putting this stuff back up on YouTube. I just haven't been putting the last few up because it was just kind of loose conversation. So I thought it was better now that we're back getting together. So we'll try to we'll see if we can find someone who'll do a clinic repeat next Saturday, or 2 weeks from today.
I have one
Jesse's
more.
a good candidate for that. Since he did a clinic and he had lots of people at it, it was obviously something everybody wanted to see. So it sounds like Jesse's the first person we should ask to do his clinic again here. David, that's a hint. If you don't have his email, I'll send you his email.
All right. By the way, Brain Trust people here, I want to put, here's the back of that F shell. Whoa, camera's rotated. Come on. Can you guys, oh, this is so confusing. Come on. Where's the camera? There's my hand. There.
Okay.
Okay. That looks like there are 2 objects where a conduit was run to them on the back here. They wouldn't have been marker lights. I want to put a backup light on this. Should I just go scrounge out of my stock of detail parts and put a light fixture, headlight fixture somewhere on the back of this thing up high for a backup light on it. I looked online for pictures of F units of various sorts. Everybody shoots the front of the unit or the side of the unit. There's hardly any shots of the back of F units. Anybody have any recollections of seeing backup lights on these things?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's more in the sense that on the model for the convenience of operators to have a light so that people can see what they're doing if they're doing switching or stuff for safety, and even on the and just for the modelers that will be operating the locomotive. Okay, you can dump that
Okay,
image.
wait a
I'm
minute.
actually,
Dave, I found a picture here that looks like it has a light on the back of the unit. I just put it in the chat. You might want to look at it.
okay, let me pull that up.
Here's, I'll throw this in too. I know, Larry, this is the same one you found.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Thank you, Larry.
Was this the one you found, Larry?
The FC Sonora, Baja California.
Okay, this was a
that's
Western
a
Maryland here that's got one right. Looks like it's
Right
right
there.
down here
Yeah,
next
and that's
to the door.
that's the same spot that the one I sent has the light on.
Okay, good.
So
That gives
what
me-
are those other? What are these other buttons here? They were much larger on that model. They look like there's some sort of buttons there.
Yeah,
Huh.
heaven knows.
Anyway,
Okay, great. That's all I needed was just, yes, it is done, and that's where they put it. And so I will pop a LED in there and go through, scrounge something out of my details box to have a backup light on the unit. Yeah, I've been running across some neat little items. That is a nice white LED with a 2mm nose, where with a little bit of reaming with a tapered reamer, I can slip this right into a headlight opening on an Athearn diesel, modern diesel, and gives me good color, good brightness, and it even has the resistor in there, so I can directly connect this to my DCC decoder. The resistor's already taken care of, and makes installation that much cleaner.
The one thing to do before you install it
Uh-huh.
is put it on a piece of tape with the lens side on a piece of tape and hit it with some black paint. Just paint everything else black so you don't get any light leakage inside the shell.
Once I do that once I install it, then I paint them when they're in place. But yeah, to stop the light leakage, indeed.
The light leakage is yeah, you can do it outside too if you want to, because you just keep you just put them up. I did a couple of those. You just put them down with the lens down on a piece of masking tape, and then you can just spray them, and they're all sealed when you put them in.
Because of the fit, the tight fit I have for that 2mm tip, I don't want to paint that. I just would paint the body. But yeah, I think both ways we're talking about do the job.
Yep.
When's the show at Pleasanton, Phil? When's the fair?
How far the fair? It starts, I don't know, June. Hang on, let me look on my calendar. I've got it on my calendar. I don't know the exact date. It's always for me, it's always remembering when it starts. It's June.
Yeah, I'm thinking of coming some of those days during the week because I'm retired to help with coverage.
So I think it starts the 10th.
10th of June.
The 10th of June or 17th? Hang on. Yeah, no, it's the 17th. I'm sorry, it's the 17th, I think.
That's when it starts?
Yeah.
Oh, Susan and I are scheduled to be out of town the 20th through the 23rd, but
that's just
never fails. Anyway, some neat ideas we've discussed today. I really appreciate you guys making some comments about the work I'm doing.
Oh, well. Cool. Well, I'm gonna bid everybody adieu and get into it. I've I've got to go out and take care of a couple of things in my yard. My take care of some of the plumbing stuff that I've got to clean up out here
Yeah.
after
job.
my plumbing debacles.
Yeah.
But oh well, it's the
All right. Does
this
anybody else have anything else in Phil's absence, or should we just call it a day for everybody?
you guys want to hang or see everybody in 2 weeks?
Sounds good.
And I'm hopeful in 2 weeks we have a June I'm looking to try to get a June activity. We'll see if we can get there in 2 weeks. So
Right.
have a good one, guys.
Okay,
All right.
everybody.
Bye
Take
now.
care.
Bye.
Okay.